Hey everybody, welcome back to Mentor Me Monday. I'm your host, Paul Turner, and today I'm doing a little year in review. I don't know about you, but it's that time of year where we kind of look backwards and say, what did we accomplish? What did we get done? Does it matter? What will we do? What we won't do again? And so last year I sent out, this time last year I sent out to our Fresh Impact newsletter folks, 14 questions I'll be asking in 2014. And I'll probably be sending out a version of that for the next year, 15 questions I'll be asking in 2015. So if you want that, by the way, you can go ahead and just go down into the description below, and there'll be a link to where you can get the Fresh Impact newsletter that I send out every couple of weeks. And so I'm reviewing this for myself. Let me tell you what my top three were. My top three questions that I picked out of the 14 questions that I was going to look at for my own life, my own stuff, was, number one, how will I define success this year? And I think, and that's the top question for me every year probably, is how will I determine success? And of course, the metrics that we use are determined on our situation. You know, it could be anything from numbers of kids, at numbers of events, or numbers of salvations, numbers of baptisms, things like that. And I think this year, and how I think I chose to define success, was my relationship with kids. Was I able to maintain connection? Was I able to maintain an even flow with students and helping them develop in their relationship with Christ? And I have to say yes to that I think I got that pretty good in that sense, because I'm seeing students grow. I'm maintaining healthy relationships with students, maintaining healthy relationships throughout the church. So that's pretty good. The second question that I asked myself was, how was I going to do this, was how will I intentionally grow my relationship with God this year? And of course, that is number one for all of us, I would think, is how we're going to do that, right? We got ministry on the mind here, you know, how we're going to determine success, but then how are we also going to determine whether or not we're all growing in our own faith? So for me, part of growing in my own faith has been doing things like mentoring you guys right here on this channel, because that helps me grow, because I have to think about my own life and my own development to help you with your life and your development. The other thing I look at is not necessarily time spent in the Bible, but how well did I absorb what was being said, whether that's through a Wednesday night, through a Sunday morning message with my pastor, or whether that is through my own journey. This year I'm doing Advent. I'm celebrating the days and kind of being reflective and things like that. So I'm kind of ending the year in a healthy manner. So I like to think that I kind of grew my own faith and developed myself in such a way. And once again, these are all, I'm sure there's plenty for you too. There are plenty of low times that were through the year that you said that was terrible. But I would also challenge that and say that our lowest times this year may have been our deepest time that we spent with the Lord to really, really dig and to get into what God was saying and get into His Word. So don't judge your whole year based on, where you're at now, but look at the whole year and say, where are my low points? Where are my high points? Where were the headlines of my life? Where was, those kind of things? And say, okay, and now put that in perspective with the whole thing and say, okay, here's where I'm at today. And the third question I had was, how can I help parents better disciple their kids? And this is always a difficult one, no matter what church I've served in, is to help equip parents and help them, because parents have to be on board with that. They got to want to be helped and discipled themselves to help disciple their kids. And I like to think I did that through being consistent every Monday, sending out a parent newsletter to parents. And I'm not talking about like this fancy thing with all whatever. I'm talking about just me sharing my heart with parents. And that's giving them, articles, links, that's helping them answer questions, that's, doing those kind of things. And parents are busy, I know that. And so I try to make sure I try to just have an even flow of information with them. Some of the things that we did try this year, just so you know, is we tried a family night one Sunday of the month. That didn't work out so well. Parents did not want to come out for that. And so they did not find that of value. So I got to find a new way in 2015 to say, how would you like me to help you and your family? What can I do for that? A shared missions trip. Now, we did do that. That did happen. We had moms and their daughters, or moms and their sons, go on the missions trip this year. We took to Alaska, so that was a big deal. More home visits. I didn't do necessarily more home visits, but I think I did more fast food visits. I think I took a lot of kids out. I think I hung out with them. I think I tried to have some meeting time with them and just some face-to-face time, one-on-one time. And so I tried to have those things. So, that's a mixed bag there. So maybe I got 1 out of 3 or 1.5 out of 3 I'll give myself. So that's kind of where I judged my year. how I kind of went with that, and they're not all successes, and there's plenty of events that failed. But I think the number one thing that I try to define success by this is, what are the stories I can tell? You know, and maybe you're the same way. You're looking at metrics and numbers, and your church and your board and your pastor are going to judge you by all kinds of things. But when you answer the question, was your ministry successful this year? Judge it by the stories that happened. Talk about, you know, for me, I can talk about the kids who were transformed on the mission trips, who really changed in that perspective. I can talk about kids who found the Lord this year. I can talk about the kids that I baptized this year. I can talk about the individual time that I spent praying with kids, or I can talk about the kids who had these visionary ideas, or I can talk about the kids that led our Sunday school when I was gone this past Sunday. You know, those are, to me, are the best stories of all. So I don't know what your stories are, but dig deep this year and say, this past year, what were the headlines? Well, if I were to put this in a perspective of a newspaper or a web page, what is the lead headline for your students? Maybe break it down, like, you know, in you know, the year ends review of everything, it'd be like the headlines of sports and the top news stories of, you know, 2014 and those things. If you were to put together a collection of those things, what would they look like for your, divided up? What were the evangelistic headlines? What were the worship headlines? What were the discipleship headlines? What were the community headlines? What were the serving headlines? You know, divide it up that way and say, what were the big headlines of this year? And I have an idea for tomorrow, by the way, for Tuesday Panic. So you don't want to miss that. That involves headlines, that maybe get your kids on board with this as well. So anyway, that's my story for the year. That's how I'm kind of reviewing this past year. If you want to get on the Fresh Impact newsletter, the link's down below in the description. But I would love to hear your feedback. How are you reviewing this past year? What are your metrics? What are you judging this year by? What has God done in you personally? You know, what were the headlines for your personal life of what God did in your heart? I'd love to hear some stories from you guys. How are you looking at this past year? How are you reviewing it? How are you judging it with success or those kind of things? And I'd just love to hear your stories. So leave me some comments down below. Otherwise, if you are brand spanking new, thank you for joining me today for the Tuesday Panic. And if you don't have to get these videos in your inbox, if you want to get these videos in your inbox, just hit the subscribe button right there, and that will get videos like this in your inbox. If you're a regular, thanks for joining me and hanging out with me. If you have questions or comments, please leave me one of those. I'd be glad to answer any questions I can. Thanks for joining me today for Mentor Me Monday. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow on the Tuesday Panic.